Okay, so you know where to go.
Thank you. Welcome everyone. My name is Councillor Kevin Guy. I'm leader of Bath and North East Somerset Council. Welcome to everyone who's participating and everyone who's watching online. I'll just make a brief statement. Due to the rise of COVID numbers and the desire to retain a level of social distancing at council meetings, we are holding this informal virtual cabinet meeting to enable cabinet, councillors and members of the public to take part. This virtual meeting will be conducted in the normal manner, but as any decisions will not be legally enforceable, they will be formally made at a physically reduced quorum decision-making meeting tomorrow on the 11th of February. We will review this approach for future cabinet meetings in line with government health guidance at the time. I will just go around and ask the cabinet to introduce themselves, please. I'll start with Councillor Samuel.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Richard Samuel. I represent Walcott Ward and I am responsible for economic development and resources.
Councillor Warren, please.
Councillor Sarah Warren for Bath Avon North Ward and leading on climate emergency and sustainable transport.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Ball. Tim, you're on mute.
Sorry, I wasn't sure you said. Sorry, Kevin. Yeah, Councillor Tim Ball, Twerton Ward, responsible for planning and licensing.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Bourne.
Councillor Alison Bourne for Whitcomb and Lincoln Ward and leading on adult social care.
Thank you, Alison. Councillor Davies.
Hi, I'm Councillor Tom Davis, one of the ward members for Walcott Ward and a joint cabinet member for Adult Services and Council House Building.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Rigby.
Evening, I'm Councillor Amanda Rigby. I serve the resident of Bathwick Ward and I'm cabinet member for transport.
Thank you, Amanda. Councillor Romero.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Dina Romero and I am a councillor for Southdown. And my cabinet role is for children and young people, communities and culture. Thank you, Dina. And Councillor Wood.
Councillor Dave Wood, councillor for Mendick Ward, cabinet member for neighbourhood services.
Thank you, Dave. I also welcome the officers that are participating. Okay, apologies for absence. Maria, there are none, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, no apologies, Chair.
Brilliant. Okay, the declarations of interest, and as this is a budget, I'll just ask Michael to do a brief statement. Michael.
Okay, Chair, thank you. I'm granting a general dispensation for all councillors today, and that's in relation to item 11 for the payment of council tax. I'm also granting special dispensations to those councillors who may be in receipt of council services, and I would invite those who are to declare their interest now.
Thank you, Michael. I would like to declare that my family business was in relief of the COVID relief grant. Is that noted, Michael? Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Yes, my grandson who lives with me is in receipt of social services support, and two of my grandchildren live with me have EHCP plans.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Warren.
I have a family member in receipt of an education, health and care plan.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. I cannot see any further declarations of interest. Okay, all noted. Thank you, Michael. Okay, moving on to urgent business agreed by the chair. There is no urgent business agreed by myself. Number 5, statements and petitions from the public and councillors. Okay, I will obviously remind members of the public and councillors they have their usual 3 minutes to make their statements. We will start off by inviting David Redgewell. David, are you there? I can't see David. Mike, is David here?
Yes, Chair.
David, can you hear me okay? I will move on if you can't hear me. Okay, not a problem. We'll come back to Mr. Redgewell in due time. We'll go on to the second speaker. It's Councillor Kumar, please. Councillor Kumar, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Chair. Thank you very much. Should I start?
Yes, your 3 minutes start whenever you're ready, Councillor Kumar.
Thank you. My time starts now. Thank you, Chair. In this world and our own Bath society, which is full of conflict, hatred, manipulative lies, produces various forms of racism, direct, indirect, and institutional and personal attacks on individuals. We, as the publicly elected councillors, need to come together to discuss our differences and try and reconcile them with collegiality. I emphasize on the word collegiality. That is also topic of my speech today. Colleagues and friends, the Cabinet needs to investigate properly into the issues which I have raised with you and which has been also reported widely in the media. Issues related to bullying, discrimination, and most particularly the manipulative lies. These issues are not going to wither away on their own. Brushing them under the carpet will be foolish and complete baloney. I repeat the word baloney, B-A-L-O-N-E-Y. Colleagues, please remember that it is always rewarding to resolve a conflict rather than to dissolve a professional relationship. I don't want to raise the details of my concerns here. Suffice to say that it is in the public domain, and I have been the subject of iniquitous, I-N-I-Q-U-I-T-O-U-S, immoral and sustained abuse and direct discrimination. Some of you might have watched that these issues were raised in the temple of our democracy, the House of Commons, a few weeks ago, which can only damage the reputation of our charming city and council. So all I'm asking is for the Cabinet to set up an investigation that is independent of the council itself. They should be empowered to discuss all the allegations of both sides, mainly by the party, and particularly when very recently I have been branded as a perpetrator and not the victim in a very, very transparent manner, sir. My family, an immigrant family, and 16-year-old son who has brought so much glory to the country and county, and his friends asked me, did you give a death threat to a woman councillor? I repeat, did you give death threat to a woman councillor? If I did, investigate it. Why are you not investigating it? Were you told to leave a council event as your presence would be embarrassing for the then mayor of the city?
Councillor Kumar,
there are many.
Time is up. Thank you.
There are many. There are many. Therefore, Chair, I would like to suggest that an independent member of the risk panel is involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kumar, your 3 minutes are up now, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kumar. We'll move on to the next speaker, please.
I was done, sir, before you said.
Catherine Howells, please. Next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you to the Cabinet for giving me the chance to speak to you today. And I'm here to speak to you about the proposed parking charges in Midsummer Norton. I'm very grateful to the PDS panel who agreed last week my request for these proposed parking charges for South Road to be referred back to the Cabinet. Just about 6 days ago, I launched an online petition in my ward, and as of this evening, it's received around 300 signatures. I'm sure that other speakers that are here this evening will tell you the same. There's a huge opposition to this proposal within Midsummer Norton. We need our high street to be supported to thrive and not to be hindered and damaged by these plans. Midsummer Norton has a strong community spirit, and our high street plays a vital role in this. Our shops and cafes, pharmacies, the post office, the bank, the library, and our baby and toddler groups, they provide a lifeline to our residents and our neighbours. They bring income to the council through rates and taxes, and they provide jobs to our friends and families. I believe that introducing these parking charges will be counterproductive to maintaining the council budget for the following reasons. Firstly, the inevitable reduction in footfall to the high street, which will result in a loss of revenue for local shops. Many shops are already struggling to stay afloat due to the pandemic, And shop closures not only impact local residents, but they also hit the council's coffers. The fewer shops we have, the fewer visitors we will get, and the cycle will spiral downwards. A reduction in footfall to our local post offices and banks may result in us losing these essential services if they become uneconomical to maintain. And this would have a huge impact on our elderly community or on those who struggle to get to one of the nearby cities. I've heard that one concern is that free parking encourages people to park all day in order to get the bus into Bath or Bristol. And I'm sure some people would continue to do this with a modest charge, but others are going to start looking for free parking out in the residential streets, which is going to cause a problem for local residents. Taking all of the above into account, I believe the proposals would be unlikely to generate the revenue anticipated and further could cause a loss of revenue to the council. I was very pleased to hear local reports recently that you might be considering withdrawing these proposals. I would like to ask now that Councillor Samuel and the Cabinet confirm that these plans will be scrapped. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Councillor Samuel will be making a statement later, but I really appreciate listening to you over the last few weeks and take all your points on board. Richard, can I confirm you're making the statement later, not now?
I'll be covering all aspects of the budget in moving recommendations, Chair.
I thought you would. Thank you very much, Councillor Samuel. Thank you very much, Catherine, for your time and your statement.
Thanks
Thank you
very
very
much.
much. Take care. Councillor Grant Johnson is next. Grant, are you there?
All right.
Are you with us, Grant?
Sorry, I was trying to start my own video, but someone else had to start it for me.
No problem. Your 3 minutes starts whenever you're ready, Grant.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to start today by applauding the efforts of Councillor Romero for raising awareness around HIV during HIV testing week and leading by example in getting tested. It really couldn't be easier, so I would urge everyone to know their status. I'm here today to present to the leader of Baines Council and his cabinet a petition of 1,164 signatures from local residents and a separate letter that has been countersigned by 48 local businesses in Midsummer Norton and Radstock, both of which call for the withdrawal of car parking charges as proposed in this administration's budget for 2022-23. In my time fighting against the many ridiculous ideas and abject failures of this administration, I have never witnessed a community so vigorously against the proposals put forward by the council as much as this. The strength of feeling, as I spoke openly with traders and residents, was one of anger and disbelief. Here was an administration prepared to do so much damage to the economic prosperity of the community for such little payback. There was no conversations with business owners, no foresight of the implications it might cause, and yet the Cabinet went out to sell their budgetary vision for Bath and North East Somerset, but at the expense of local residents and local businesses. We are now being run by a Lib Dem group that have so little in the way of imagination that they try and steal the campaigns and ideas of the opposition councillors. This was demonstrated at the weekend when a Lib Dem activist who spoke earlier and a cabinet member were distributing leaflets opposing their own administration's proposals. I mean, you really couldn't make it up. Do they honestly think that after weeks of opposition, the public are going to suddenly believe that the Liberal Democrats have residents' best interests at heart? I don't think so somehow, because it stank of damage limitation and the public are not fools. But this is the same old story, isn't it? A story of an administration that says one thing and does another. Back when Councillor Guy was representing Telford and Wrekin, the local Liberal Democrats were the ones protesting.
It's pronounced Wrekin, but carry on.
Sorry, well, there we go. Telford, you would know, wouldn't you? The local library, Liberal Democrats were the ones protesting at the loss of library services, and now we see them stripping our libraries bare as part of their budget proposals. The hypocrisy is off the chart. If this administration wants to have any shred of credibility, then it needs to garner the moral authority to lead, and that is gained by listening intently to the views of residents and demonstrating commitment for the things you're supposed to value. I would carefully consider the impact your proposals have on the livelihoods of local businesses and local residents before you try to play politics with them.
Time.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. I rarely heard such a rambling set of irrational thoughts. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next speaker. Councillor Michael Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll start whenever you're ready, Michael.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do the video. From the exchanges we've had just the last couple of speakers, I'm hoping tentatively that one is knocking at an open door. I'm here 10 years after the last time it was proposed to impose charges, particularly on South Road car park. And at the time, I was collecting a petition and handing it into the administration, I remember. And I'm very pleased to say the administration did listen and withdrew the proposal. So I'm very much hoping that happens this time. Midsummer Norton's High Street is even more fragile now than it was 10 years ago. Just at the bottom of my road here, we've got McColl's, a prime site, which has been closed fairly recently. And then a little further along, a large chemist's, Lloyd's, has been closed for and empty for a very long time. Numerous other damaging looking empty properties demonstrate the fragility that we have. We need all the advantages that we can to maintain the community spirit, which Catherine Howes referred to, and is very true, and which we treasure. The climate emergency, I know, is dear to the hearts of the current administration, and I do fear that if a FAF, even of low charges, is imposed at South Road car park, it'll encourage people to commute for their shopping as well as their work to places where they can park easily and freely, such as Shepton Mallet, Frome, even Bath's Park and Ride. We have an irony here, which I think you're probably aware of, that Baines has done very, very well in achieving funding to improve the public realm of the High Street and therefore encourage business there and the community spirit which goes with it. And it would be ironic indeed if, with this other hand, so to speak, the administration were to impose these damaging charges and therefore work in the opposite direction from the one intended. I would argue against low charges. They won't give Baines much. In fact, it might well cause them a loss. Whereas in our vulnerable situation, the faff and nuisance of having to dig around to use your phone or find some change, more likely the former, will be a discouragement which in our situation we can ill afford. I'd finally point out, slightly more cynically, that we can find quite a lot of money to refurbish a 6 or 7 year old civic centre in Keynsham. We can find the money to finance a 60 or 70 place car park at the back of Sainsbury's, specifically and only for Baines employees. I think the council taxpayers of Midsummer Norton would be disappointed, in, to say the least, if their much appreciated car park were to be changed and charges introduced. So I do make that appeal, I hope, to listening ears.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Far more a balanced and sensible statement. Thank you very much for your time. We'll move on. Councillor Alistair Singleton, please.
Thank you. In 2019, Bath and North East Somerset Council declared a climate emergency and included in the text explicit opposition to further expansion of Bristol Airport. That opposition has been regularly and steadfastly reiterated, most notably in July last year, when Councillor Sarah Warren gave compelling evidence to the Bristol Airport appeal. What happened last week was morally wrong. Though I make no criticism of the Planning Inspectorate's professionalism set within the legal context in which they must work, the decision they handed down was morally indefensible. What is equally indefensible is that the government has failed to call in the decision for being a breach of national policy and of national significance. Thousands of our constituents in Baines, as well as tens of thousands across the west of England and countless more up and down the country feel profoundly let down, betrayed even by this decision, and many are increasingly angry. They were prepared to trust the system. They can see that the case against expansion is overwhelming, and they put their faith in the government and a prime minister who claims that climate change is a top priority and told COP26 that we were at 1 minute to midnight to protect them. They have been profoundly let down. This country has a long and honourable tradition of non-violent civil disobedience in the cause of social justice, and its latest flowering is deeply rooted in the climate crisis. I expect that we will now see escalating levels of civil disobedience, and I fully respect, admire even, those who choose to pursue this path. When the system lets you down, when democratic process fails to deliver and threatens the well-being of your children and those who come after you, what resort do you have other than civil disobedience? No one seeks wantonly to break the law, but there are times when doing so is surely the moral thing to do, when failure to act is to be complicit in a greater moral dereliction. Cabinet, the situation looks bleak, but the game is not yet dead. I ask you to redouble our opposition to Bristol Airport's expansion and to work resolutely with our neighbouring authorities, with WECA, with Bristol Airport Action Network and other civil society groups as they examine the options for further appeal or judicial review and develop the strategy to prevent this idiocy. The cause, quite simply, could not be more important. Let's show those who have been betrayed that principled, clear-sighted politicians with the right values, wedded to integrity, will stand up for them, and that we will not rest until we prevail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Singleton. Fully support those comments. Thank you very much. Councillor Vic Pritchard, please. Councillor Pritchard, are you there? You're there. You're still muted, I'm afraid. Are you with us, Vic? Are you? You got everything sorted out? Okay.
Are you with me?
Yeah. Okay. We're ready when you're ready. 3 minutes to start whenever you're settled.
Okay then. Chairman, Cabinet, thank you for publishing your budget proposals for the coming financial year. I recognise the tough position the council is in financially, and I wish to commend the hard work of officers over recent weeks and months. The main problem the council faces, however, is not the absence of cash, but its misuse and this administration's misguided political priorities. For example, £128,000 of revenue funding is to be spent on operating the Ring of Steel. That is the inner ring that, as we now know, was suggested by the council, not the police. Imagine using council taxpayers' cash to block those very taxpayers from entering their own city centre. That money should be spent on more pressing revenue items.
Councillor Pritchard, I'll just point out there that nobody's being stopped from entering the city, and that is a total load of rubbish. Okay, you will carry on with your speech, but that is a load of rubbish.
Right, I hope that doesn't deny me full time allocation. Also in the budget are savings of 126,000 in library services in Midsummer Norton and Keynsham, and restructuring the waste service that adds up to hundreds of thousands of pounds. These are key services for residents, and I urge cabinets to ensure the savings do not come at the detriment of the service. Also, with much recent focus placed on ensuring vulnerable people are able to walk the streets safely at night, I do hope the £14,000 cut to the council's CCTV operations does not put people at risk of harm. The budget documents for this item state, and I quote, As this proposal is implemented, we will need to ensure that public safety concerns are not compromised by any changes that are made. I'd echo that and urge Cabinet to recognise its duty of care to residents. I'm also concerned about the proposal to reduce the Council's corporate communications budget by £34,000. This administration has already done enough to tarnish the Council's reputation for poor public engagement, and I worry that this saving is yet another example of Cabinet failing to put residents at the heart of everything it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. It's a shame that you feel comfortable lying about city centre security as much as the Prime Minister feels about lying about his stuff as well. We'll move on. Malcolm Baldwin, please, next speaker. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Baldwin, thank you very much. We can hear you fine. The 3 minutes will start whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, just before I start, I must say, I thought, having listened to your first speaker this evening, that I went to sleep in Bath and woke up in Gotham City, but maybe that's just me, I don't know. Anyway, good evening, Cabinet, and thank you. Within the budget pack, my own individual interest was drawn to the £500,000 designated for what appears to be exploratory work and study designated relating to the potential location of the Fashion Museum. In fairness, thoughts may already be well developed on where the new siting might be as part of perhaps the Milson Street Quarter project and or other very positive initiatives that this council has. I just want to throw, if I may though, some random personal thoughts, hopefully prior to any irrevocable decisions being made. This Cabinet appears rightly, in my view, to view the retail sector in Bath as not being by any means dead, although it certainly might be viewed as being on life support. Should there be a view to resite the Fashion Museum actually in or near Milson Street, then doing so, I believe, may well fill a space, but is unlikely to create much, if any, additional retail business activity in the northern sector of our city centre. The Fashion Museum, perhaps second only to the V&A in respect of the nature of its fashion collection, deserves a standalone and more prominent location in our city. I don't pretend this would be easy, but the combined site of the cattle market and corn exchange, long neglected, and irrespective of any already potential commitments to the site, would make an imaginative and stunning riverside setting for the Fashion Museum.
1 minute.
For example, the Corn Exchange building could be restored in terms of its structure facing onto Walcott Street. If not restorable, the extension could be changed and developed into a larger, dynamic and very contemporary structure. We did it in the city with the Holborn. Why not try again? The cattle market itself, with hillside views across the river, is probably the last opportunity to allow a park, albeit a small one, to be opened up for general public use. River taxis, as an example, could perhaps provide a service for commuters from the east side of the town and city into the centre of town, embarking at that point. The podium terrace, tidied up from Pulteney Street and redesigned, could provide another pedestrian link to this park and new leisure facility aligned to the Fashion Museum. So all I am really asking is, as you move ahead and spend our £500,000, please let's examine all possible opportunities to establish real long-term value for the Fashion Museum within Bath and also for visitors to that museum. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Yes, fully support that, and I'm fully agree that we should have a fashion museum which should even rival the V&A in Bath. So, yeah, welcome your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Moving on to item number 6, which is questions from the public and councillors. I can confirm that we had 22 questions from councillors. Are there any supplementary questions, Maria?
Yes, we have two councillors wishing to ask supplementary questions. Councillor Paul May wants to ask a question on M5, the local plan update, and Councillor Karen Warrington on M10, the fostering service.
Thank you, Maria. Is Councillor May here? Paul, are you on the call? I can ask you for your supplementary question if you're about. If not, I'll move on to Councillor Warren. There you are, Councillor May. Oh, you're still muted, I'm afraid. Oh.
Right, I think that's me.
That's got it. Thank you. Your supplementary question.
3 minutes, Chair. Leader, thank you very much for your reply. I'd hope for a simple yes. Following the logic of your reply, does it mean that if we have to take housing needs from Bristol, who keep refusing their own opportunities, this inappropriate housing will be added to the Bain's own housing needs? With some 70% of our area being greenbelt and an effective local plan update going before the examination soon, you will just allow WECA to dump Bristol housing in areas like my own, that's the Whitchurch Village and Penswood area, Bath Surrounds, Keynsham, Salford, Radstock, Midsummer Norton, without challenging their right to do so. Yes, we have to cooperate, but does that not mean we have to capitulate? Do you believe the Greenbelt should be protected? If you approve the draft SDS, which is the WECA document, for consultation, you will be committing Baines to accept the principle. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor May. Well, I'm wholeheartedly against being an overflow for Bristol for housing, and I'm very proud that our officers have a good reputation of putting quality houses and affordable houses in the right place. Could I ask, is it if Councillor Tim Ball would come and see you in residence, is that acceptable, Councillor May, on this issue?
Very much welcome it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor May. Thank you for your supplementary question. Councillor Warrington.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to find out about the context of the answer to question 10 from Councillor Romero, and thank you for the answer. I just wondered, how many carers do you actually have active currently, and how many have withdrawn their caring services from April the 21st, April 2021 until now? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Councillor Warrington. If I may, I'll come back to you within 5 working days with that figure for you.
Splendid. Thank you, Councillor Romero. Thank you, Councillor Warrington. Okay, there are no more supplementary questions, so I'll move on to item 7, which is the minutes. Can I invite members of the Cabinet to raise their hands if they're in favour of those minutes? Everything's okay with those? Yes? Brilliant. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Moving on, I'll sign them tomorrow. Consideration of single member items. I request the Cabinet there are none. Considerations of matters referred to by policy development scrutiny. Can I invite Councillor Warrington to present the comments of the corporate PDS panel relating to the budget? Councillor Warrington, all yours.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So I'm speaking today on the budget as Chair of the Corporate Scrutiny Panel and representing the further 2 panels. In previous years, the Chair sought to summarise the draft minutes of the 3 panels, representing many hours of input. I'm endeavouring to continue that approach, although again the challenge has been that the bulk of the minutes cover detailed comment rather than resolution-based summaries in the main part. We do have some recommendations that I will certainly pass on to Cabinet today. So Children's Adults Health and Wellbeing Policy Development Panel. That was held on Tuesday the 18th of January this year, and the comments included the following: concerns that services would provide less than they currently offer after possible savings have taken place, and that there are a lot of amber coded proposals. We obviously use a red, amber, green system with our budget. What will happen if those savings don't materialise? There were comments as to whether there were new initiatives that would be brought in with this budget. And some panel members felt that it was hard to comment as they felt there wasn't enough detail in the reports. Questions surrounding savings and how those would be made in library services and whether there was a link between the savings listed for the Bath West Children's Centre service and the family hubs. There were questions around the proposed saving from home to school transport to alternative provision and whether that was linked to the development of Culver Hay. In addition to that, members of the panel wouldn't want to see the quality of the services weakened through any of the budget decisions. In addition, they wanted to understand why the proposal relating to the foster care transformation project, which obviously we've had some questions about today, reunification transformation project hadn't been done before and was it actually achievable? There was concern surrounding the use of £5.2 million of reserves, which have to be repaid, and potential budget pressures in future years. There was a query regarding the saving of £711,000 linked to the foster care transformation project, and I understand whether that was manageable and achievable. I think that came up in a couple of panels as well. That came up in the corporate scrutiny panel. And the other issue, and last but hopefully not least, what had happened to the £540 in the last budget that was allocated to youth centres. So that's the summary of the children's and adults panel. The Climate Emergency and Sustainability panel was held on Monday the 17th. And Councillor Karen Walker, who was chair of that panel, gave a brief outline of the comments regarding the budget proposals to the corporate scrutiny panel, and it sums up some of the issues that were discussed there. And I quote, "The budget is unrealistic and will put further costs on residents. More transparency is needed in the papers, and there are concerns about parking charges in Midsummer Norton and Radstock, concerns about the garden waste services, about cuts in street lighting, and a request for reassurance that staffing issues in the climate emergency team be addressed." Again, there was a comment regarding more detail required in the budget papers, concerns again with the car parking charges, that is a theme, concern regarding the reduction on staffing for parking control. There was a challenge raised regarding the increased cost of garden waste when the service isn't always delivered, and a challenge to plans to build up in-house resources for the corporate estate staffing budget by 661,000. It was also noted that the CES specific spending is a gain on staffing rather than action. There was a concern regarding cuts to the dog warden service and what alternatives there were for tackling dog mess. I know that that is a concern. And is there a risk or loss of income associated with the reduction in parking enforcement matters? So that was the key points of that panel. So I'll move on to the corporate policy development panel, and there were some reoccurring themes, so apologies for the repetition. Again, the panel were concerned regarding the car parking charges in Midsummer Norton, and the comment, communities with little or no public transport do have to rely on their cars, and there were economic factors which have already been mentioned. There was a short debate regarding the reliance on income from heritage and commercial estate. This was recognised with a warning that it was likely that income would take 3 years to recover to the pre-COVID levels. And it was noted that we've got one of the lowest council taxes in the Southwest due to that income derived from those two particular areas. Again, foster services, concerned that saving may be unrealistic, knowing how difficult it may be to recruit foster parents, and a concern in the reduction of street lighting. So that's another recurring theme. More information again was requested regarding the cuts to the library service, and it was suggested that it was a reflection on the changes in residents' habits during the pandemic. Concern was also raised regarding inflation rates and whether these were accurate given a little bit of turmoil in the marketplace. There are two recommendations from the Corporate Policy and Development Scrutiny Panel. One was to ask Cabinet to take their comments into account, and the second point was to reconsider the introduction of the parking charges in Midsummer Norton and Rudstock. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Warrington. Very informative. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to item 10, recent single member decisions taken. I'll just ask the Cabinet to note those, please. And then we'll move on to the main body of the meeting, which is the budget and council tax for 22-23 and the financial outlook. Can I ask Councillor Samuel to move the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Chair. Well, members will be aware that the COVID pandemic has had and continues to have a lasting negative impact on the council's finances. Two of our principal sources of income, heritage attractions and our commercial property, are performing well below their normal full capacity. The former because of the downturn in tourism and the need to maintain safe circulation space in the Roman baths and the pump rooms, and the latter because of a 40% downward market fall in rents, together with rent arrears that accumulated during the pandemic. Put simply, less income means more pressure on our budget because we cannot rely on the income we normally use to fund our full range of services. We expect to receive £13 million less income in the coming financial year. When this is added to the significant inflationary pressures in the wider economy and the post-lockdown service pressures, we have a perfect storm. Now, I do not expect the council to emerge from this financial maelstrom until 25-26 at the earliest, by which time £82.3 million gross will have been lost to the council forever. Now, I'll just repeat that. The council expects to lose £82.3 million from its income over the 5-year period from 2020 to 25. Just think what could have been done with that money. It's going to take several more years before our recovery is complete, I fear. Now, against this background, the Cabinet set itself the task of maintaining the drive to improve living standards for Bath North East Somerset residents by holding spending on transport and substantially enhancing our vital neighbourhood services, and beginning the task of building the first council houses in our area for a generation. We also committed to try and keep any council tax rise to a minimum, recognising pressures on household incomes are severe at present due to the government's failure to fully protect households from the expected spike in energy prices. Of course, the council provides a very wide range of services to our residents, and wherever possible, these are being maintained at pre-pandemic levels. In some areas, such as children's services, there are long-term funding pressures which have continued to intensify. We have therefore provided additional funds to support these essential services for young people. However, the central government support for these services is frankly insufficient over the longer term, given all the other pressures that face local government. The same, I'm afraid, is also true of adult services, where there is little evidence that the government's recent proposals will lead to better financial outcomes for these crucial services. Now, in the budget, beneath the headlines, which I'll come on to later, I highlight a number of series of important investment decisions we're making in this budget. We are putting more money into the council's IT systems and staffing, reflecting the move to more home-based working by council staff. And they require resilient IT to enable them to do the job we ask them to do. There are resources for a decent pay settlement for our hardworking staff, and there is provision in the budget against the expected spike in energy prices. There are more funds for maintaining our commercial property estate, which has been sorely neglected in past years. And there are hedges against contract inflation prices built into the budget, because we are expecting contract tenders to come in at higher levels than we would prefer at times. We've also made the necessary allowances for expected demographic growth within the district, and there is more money for home to school transport and more money for recycling investment. Now, all these and more show our intent to make proper provision for investment into its services to ensure their fitness for the future. I'm going to leave other cabinet members to expand on the detailed improvements in their own portfolios, but in economic development, I'll point to the following. We've put in funding to develop the business case for the Fashion Museum to its new location in the Milton Quarter and the development of a collection centre. And the 500,000 that has been misrepresented by some Conservative councillors is actually to take the collection centre project to planning permission stage. And you can't do that for nothing. Some people seem to think you can. There is funding for the regeneration of high streets in Bath and across North East Somerset, and the majority of that money is going to local retail centres that are very important to our communities. This year we'll see major development work at Bath Quays North and the completion of the Bath Quays South project and the opening of the new bridge and the demolition of Avon Street car park. We will see the completion of the Bath Western Riverside land swap and the bringing forward of two major planning applications, one by ourselves and one by the private sector. And we are working closely with those other applicants to make sure the two schemes work together. We will see completion of the Radstock Healthy Living Centre, the taking forward further of the Summer Valley Enterprise Zone, and the commencement of the Bath River Line project phase 1. Now, all these projects will bring forward jobs and increased economic activity to support our local economy. Of course, to maintain that programme, there are balancing savings to be found as ever. I have identified 11.8 million of savings and income changes, which include 2 million in reduced borrowing costs from shrinking back the capital programme, £2 million from efficiency savings in adult services from service transformation, reductions in foster care placement costs, and more money from recyclable sales and garden waste collections. There will be higher income from car parking charges, and we are introducing a 2% staff vacancy turnover rate, which will save £1.3 million. And there are other smaller level savings. I'm not going to go through those tonight. They're set out in the annexes to the report. At this point, I'm also able to announce two minor changes from my draft budget, which has already been subject to public consultation. And I'm very pleased that there has been strong response from that consultation in the various forms that we've carried it out. And I'm very pleased and thank all those people who responded. We have listened, firstly, we have listened carefully to the arguments advanced against the proposed introduction of car parking charges into Midsummer Norton and Radstock. Due to the relative weakness of those local economies compared with other parts of Bath North East Somerset, I have concluded that charges should not be introduced because of the potentially negative impact that might have on local high street businesses. I am grateful to those who made statements arguing against the charges. So these proposals, therefore, will no longer form part of the budget plans, and an amendment will be made to the council budget next week, which is set out in a revised recommendation to Annex 2.1, which has been circulated to the Cabinet. The second change I'm making is to reassure Bath Library users that there is no intention to relocate other council services wholesale into the library on any scale. and that a wider review of customer services and the library operation will take place to identify the necessary savings. To this end, I have agreed to re-profile the library savings, which were 126,000 over 2 years, to allow the review to take place and enable a meaningful consultation and engagement with service users to happen. Now, I hope that library users in particular will participate in this review to help shape its outcome, whatever this turns out to be. There is no budget impact from this change. Chair, this is a budget that maximises our ambition to make Bath and North East Somerset a better place, that maintains the move towards carbon reduction, particularly in transport, that invests in key services and provides the building of new council houses for the first time in over 30 years. It is also a budget that invests in the future, not only for residents, but also in the council itself, to enable it to become a better performing council, able to do more and to better serve our residents. This programme has to be fully funded, and to avoid damaging cuts, it is necessary to raise council tax, but only as little as possible. A general council tax rise of 1.99% is therefore proposed, which equates to £30.44 for a Band D property, or 58 pence a week. In addition, the social care precept will rise by 1%, making a total rise of 2.99% or £45.73 pence a year, which equates to 88p per week. This increase is well below the current rate of national inflation, which stands at 5.4%. Finally, Chairman, I want to highlight the difference between the Liberal Democrat approach and the Conservative approach, which was advocated recently publicly by its leader. In a recent interview with Summer Valley FM, he gave some clear pointers as to what residents can expect if, heaven forbid, his party takes control of the council next year. He said, and I'm quoting, "There will be a lot of reversals when we take control." Now, what this means is wasting residents' taxes, simply changing things for right-wing ideological reasons. So far, he has promised free parking, removing city centre security measures, cancelling the work to implement the new fashion museum, scrapping the Entry Hill bike park. No doubt the list will grow. These are all unfunded populist promises running into millions. What will he cut to fund his promises? Let him say. He went on to say in this interview that once again the Tories would be sacking hundreds of hard-working council staff, claiming this would have no impact on services, which is total nonsense. Last time the Tories were in control of the council, they sacked 184 staff at a cost of up to 7.8 million in redundancy payments, including a number of six-figure sums paid to managers. This included the cultural vandalism of closing the council's arts development service, so important for the health and vitality of the city of Bath and the wider area. And they paid for this by raiding the council's capital funds. It was like selling the family silver to fund a holiday you couldn't really afford anyway. The legacy they left behind when they left office was unattainable savings and income targets, demoralised staff in under-resourced and chaotic services. They also wasted millions in office. How can we forget the park and ride fiasco, the library debacle, the Visit Bath shambles? And the Conservatives were also responsible for the privatisation of our community health services, handing them over to Virgin Care and now sold on to a private equity company. What else will they privatise? The Tory party used to claim a reputation for sound financial management, but that no longer exists. This is the party that is now responsible for the highest tax burden on UK citizens since the Second World War, that forces people to feed themselves at food banks and lets fat cat energy companies get rich, while many people have to choose to eat or heat. A party that gives tax breaks to millionaires while cutting universal credit. A party that illegally awarded contracts to its supporters, estimated by the National Audit Office at 35 billion, and has had to write off over 4 billion of COVID grants because of fraud. Frankly, I would no more take a Tory promise than I would buy the elixir of life from a snake oil salesman. Now, by contrast, Chair, while the Tory party has lost its reputation for good financial management many years ago and is now the party that over-promises but under-delivers, that plays fast and loose with your money, our budget plans are well thought out, robust, and deliver investment into our key services for local residents. We are building the first council houses since the 1980s. We are investing millions in our high streets. Our transport plans are bringing down pollution. Our recycling is the best ever, and we are investing in its future. Our parks are looking better than they have for years, with 5 Green Flag Awards this year. We've repaired Cleveland Bridge pretty well. That had been left to deteriorate. Our improvements to Sydney Gardens, the opening of Cleveland Pools, the new World Heritage Centre show our confidence in the future for our area. After the waste and incompetence of the last Tory administration, we have brought the council's finances under control, and we are investing in the future of our area. We invest, they slash and burn. I'll end by saying we are, and repeating, we are the party of sound economic planning and delivery, and we've proved that by our actions. So, Chair, with that, I move the recommendations as set out in the report, together with the amendment I mentioned, and I commend this budget to the Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Samuel. Well said. I'm proud to second this budget and paper with its amendment. Once again, the Liberal Democrats have been able to balance the books in extraordinary times. This is in contrast to the financial mismanagement of the previous Tory administration, who could not even balance the books when the sun was shining. We as Lib Dems are not only showing prudent financial management, but are delivering on things that really matter to people, such as building the first council houses for a generation. The Tories spent years cutting services, reducing staff numbers, and wasting millions of local taxpayers' money on redundancies. The Lib Dem administration has said no to this downward spiral of negativity. We are doing the opposite, as Councillor Samuel has alluded to. We are investing in new staff. We are increasing the spending on key services. We are enhancing our neighbourhood services. We are getting the basics right, and we are protecting our children's and adult services. Local businesses are bouncing back from the hardship of COVID, and this budget supports local businesses, opposed to the contrast in negativity and talking down of our great city and the local area by the Tory trolls. The Tories have a track record of laying hundreds of staff off and bleeding vital services to death, while the Lib Dems, through this budget, are investing in the services and the community. Instead of burning, we are building. Instead of moaning, we are doing. Instead of hatred, we give hope. I am proud to be the leader of this local Lib Dem team, and I'm very proud to second this budget proposal. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the debates. Councillor Rigby first.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to echo my thanks to Richard and to his officer team for the inordinate amount of work they've had to put into this budget against a background of unprecedented challenges. These challenges include getting very late notice of any national settlements that we could anticipate, and the team has done a great job of preparing for all eventualities. I hope the announcement of the Levelling Up Fund made on Tuesday, where it looks like we will get an extra £4,000 from government, hasn't thrown them out too much, and let's not spend it all at once. Like the other Cabinet members, I'll speak a little bit about my own portfolio, but I'll also highlight where I'm pleased there's been further investment. And that's right, that's what I said, investment. Against a loss in revenue of circa, I think, Richard, you said 82.5, I put it down at circa 83 million over the past 2 and a bit years because of COVID. We are still protecting what is important to you. The promises that we made before the elections, where we could in no way have anticipated the pandemic, and we still propose that we minimise cuts and we invest in our priorities. And in stark contrast of others have said to the approach adopted by the previous administration, and referred to as an approach that may happen again on a recent radio interview, we are not slashing staff, we are not cutting services to the point that they can't help but fail. We are taking the hard decisions where we need to, but adding to central government underfunding and losing a lot of headcount is counterproductive to what it is we need to deliver, not to mention it's morally repugnant. So, as examples, putting money aside again to try and combat the blight which girls bring to residents every year. Investing in getting the basics right. looking at the strategy to reach net zero in 2030 and ensuring that the impacts of the transport schemes that Sarah and I put forward are mitigated for those people who need the most support is ambitious, it's forward thinking, and it's achievable. In my portfolio, probably the most remarkable thing is how we've been able to protect what we want to achieve, and there are far fewer cuts than I could have anticipated. The vast majority of the cuts in my portfolio aren't cuts. What they are doing is acknowledging the reality of the fact that we have some unfilled vacancies, and we are going to charge a more reasonable rate for some of the works that we do. And we contribute to funding what we want to achieve via parking income. As I'm sure others will mention, the pandemic has thrown a real focus on how dependent we had become on tourism, heritage and parking revenue. And I am proud to be part of a team that acknowledges it's our role to look long term and create a BAMES which has a more sustainable and resilient funding model, especially as circa 83% of our non-project income goes on our statutory services. So, assuming this budget goes through, what will happen? Well, over the next few weeks, there'll be updates on livable neighbourhoods, residence parking zones, active travel, to name just a few which sit in the sustainable transport portfolio with my colleague Sarah. But from transport perspective, there will also be speed limit consultations, zebra crossings, reviews of the assets we own, which have suffered from historic lack of maintenance. Maybe some of this is less headline catching work, but it is vital to our communities. I will sound a note of caution that many of the large capital projects are subject to the cost of material and labour pressures, like everywhere else, the COVID, Brexit double whammy. I trust that this budget, as amended, goes through here at Cabinet and look forward to it receiving the support it truly deserves at Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby. Councillor Romero.
Thank you, Chair. Before I talk in more detail on other proposals within my portfolio, I think it is important to reiterate a point made by Councillor Samuel, and so to reassure residents on one particular issue. Bath Central Library is not having services cut and is not being forced into a merger with one-stop shop services. This is not a rerun of the poorly thought through Conservative proposals of 2017, but a reflection of changes in service access and of the reprovision of once lost facilities that residents tell us they value. Over the last 2 years, we have seen a large number of residents choose to access services digitally instead of face-to-face. This means a potential footfall for one-stop shop services, and so this means that the potential footfall for one-stop services has fallen dramatically. At the same time, work at Lewis House has been on reconfiguring the ground floor to provide a new police station in the centre of Bath. With these changes to the place where face-to-face services were delivered and what is being asked for by residents, we wanted to take the opportunity to consider if a couple of services such as the issue and renewal of discovery cards or of blue badges could be done from a better location to Lewis House, which many tell us hasn't been suitable for some years due to a lack of very nearby blue badge parking. The library is one such space with blue badge parking in the basement with a lift to the front door. However, it is not the only suitable location and potential alternatives are to be looked at. In the budget papers before you, you will see that a sum of £100,000 was expected as a saving this year. If you now refer to Appendix 2I, you will note that this saving is now to be reprofiled over 2022-23 and 23-24 with the use of the smoothing reserve. This reflects the vacancies the service is currently holding. The remainder will be put into the 2023 budget saving and will only be crystallised following discussions with library users, including the Friends of Bath Library, and any plans will then be formally consulted on. I hope this puts those concerned minds at rest. To sum up on this point, a target saving is in the budget, but now reprofiled. Plans are not yet drawn up and we will seek input from users and formal consultation will take place. This is in addition to a review of services for Midsummer Norton and Keynsham libraries, the mobile library service and an increase in investment in the home delivery service. We are also looking at investment across a range of other areas within my portfolio, including a focus on apprenticeships, which will help with succession planning, as well as giving people real new opportunities, regardless of age, previous experience, or qualifications. Other areas of interest are an expectation that we can reduce the spend on home to school transport by £40,000 by centralising alternative provision on one site instead of on the two somewhat distant sites that we now currently use. We're looking at relocating both primary and secondary alternative provision onto the Culver Hayes school site. Please note, though, this leaves a significant part of the site available for a new education offer for Bath and Bath and North East Somerset, which as yet is a work in progress, and I hope to tell you more about that one soon. We are also able to reduce our spending by £50,000 on interagency adoption fees, and this is now being used less since the creation of Adoption West. We are expecting reduced costs in foster care through a transformation programme and campaigns focusing on increasing foster care numbers, reducing other residential placements, and a new reunification transformation project, which aims to reunite, where appropriate, children and young people with their families and so exit from residential placements. These two projects should release over £1 million of committed costs. I am aware that this is an area of interest and so want to point to the full details which are outlined in my answer to question 10 to Councillor Warrington in the question and answers earlier. As everyone knows, children and adult social care is where the biggest portion of any council budget goes. So I'm pleased to be able to put forward these expected reductions in spending, and I would like to stress that these are not cuts, and so these are not cuts to services. Finally, I was delighted to announce the return of our traditional Bath Christmas market earlier this week. This is relevant to the budget discussions as the work in one department, such as in our events team on the Christmas market, brings significant income into other services, such as into parking and into licensing, as well as providing a huge boost for local traders, retail, hospitality and hoteliers. Just as a reminder, in 2019, the last year we were able to hold the market in its traditional form, 400,000 visitors brought an additional £32.5 million into the local economy, as well as adding to the council's income. And so it's very important to the council's financial ability to provide vital services. So on this positive note, I will draw my remarks to an end, and suffice to say, I will be supporting this budget as it's been set out.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to echo the comments of my colleagues and pass on my huge thanks to Councillor Samuel and to the Council's Chief Financial Officer, Andy Rothery, and everyone else involved in the preparation of this budget. To have successfully navigated a process which has produced a balanced budget with the significant headwinds and pressures which we face at present is a remarkable achievement. But my thanks goes beyond just the budget setting process. It goes to their stewardship of the council's finances over the past 2.5 years. This sound financial stewardship has enabled us tonight to consider a budget which, despite the very clear financial pressures we face as a council, is extraordinary for the ambition it presents and the scale of investment in our local area, which this budget unlocks. Just take the details of the capital spend. With nearly 200 million approved and provisional spend, this Lib Dem administration continues to demonstrate its commitment to delivering for our local community. And this range of investment is huge, and all of it focused on improving the lives of our residents, whilst ensuring at all times that we meet our commitments to tackle the climate and ecological emergencies. The investment detail will see us as an authority spend millions on local regeneration and economic development, renewable energy, livable neighbourhoods, walking routes, cycling routes, special educational need projects in our schools and colleges, upgrades to our recycling facilities. The list goes on, but all of it only possible because of this administration's excellent management of the council's finances over the past 2.5 years. You won't be surprised, though, with my portfolio to hear me bring particular attention to one of the largest items of capital spend detailed in tonight's report, the nearly £12 million of investment which the council is committing to for this next year so that we can deliver the first general needs council houses in a generation, and the further £5 million included for affordable housing. In 2019, this Lib Dem administration committed to the people of Bath and North East Somerset that we would do just this, that for the first time in decades, we would build and deliver council houses for social rent. The budget we're considering tonight secures the finances to be able to do this. And later this year, I'm delighted to say we will see the first of these council houses open. And never has the need for new council and affordable housing been so great. We are an area with some of the least affordable housing in the country, with thousands of our local residents currently on our social housing waiting list. And so tonight, with this budget, we reaffirm our commitment to our residents that we, as a Lib Dem administration, will play a leading role in meeting this need. And I'm delighted, therefore, to be speaking tonight in support of this budget paper.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Yeah, and particular thanks to you on your excellent work in council housing. We're doing brilliant stuff. Well done. Really, really pleased at that. Thank you very much. Councillor Warren.
Good evening. This budget represents good news when it comes to both sustainable travel and wider measures to tackle the environmental emergencies. Despite the dire financial picture of ongoing and deepening austerity impacting local government across the country, contrast our approach this evening with that of Bath and North East Somerset's Leader of the Opposition, who recently boasted that he would make further council redundancies and still deeper cuts to council services that we have spent almost 3 years rebuilding. The areas of strategic priority for the next 2 years that we've identified in this evening's paper include continued commitment to addressing the climate and ecological emergency and investing in renewable energy. In this area, funded from council revenue, thanks to Councillor Samuel and his team's excellent financial management, we're boosting our sustainability team, which will be led by a head of green transformation. We're currently recruiting an energy policy and strategy manager who will help us to increase the district's capacity for low carbon electricity generation, as well as increasing the uptake of energy efficient retrofit of our homes. And you can't do this work without staff, although some seem to think you can. This revenue funding is accompanied this year by almost £500,000 capital to support the installation of renewables onto council buildings. And we continue to benefit from the West of England Combined Authority's contribution to the South West Energy Hub, which helps public sector and not-for-profit organisations get green energy projects up and running. Another of our defined strategic priority areas is investment in sustainable transport schemes across the council area, focusing on livable neighbourhoods, active travel and reduced reliance on the car. On livable neighbourhoods, we are currently in between co-design phases of the first 15 schemes, and this budget sets aside up to £1.7 million of capital for next financial year to complete these. As discussed at recent cabinet meetings, the City Region Sustainable Transport Fund will provide Bath and North East Somerset with a historic settlement of £129 million over 5 years for a capital programme that will include further rounds of livable neighbourhoods, as well as improved cycling, walking and public transport infrastructure. This funding will also reverse many years of austerity cuts to the council's capacity to plan and build transport infrastructure by creating a Baines team led by a head of sustainable transport. This programme will support the much needed reduction of carbon emissions from transport, which have remained stubbornly high in Baines, just as in the rest of the country. Through the West of England Combined Authority, this budget also spells out that we will continue to share in improvements to Metro West rail services, as well as seeing investment of £5 million over the next 2 years in the Bath River Line to create a new riverside linear park and active travel corridor. Particular highlights supporting cycling and walking transport in Councillor Rigby's revenue budget include £20,000 for cycle parking, funds for safer routes to school and for reduced speed limits in rural areas. All that remains this evening for me is to once again thank Councillor Samuel, Chief Finance Officer Andy Rothery and their team for this excellent paper. I wholeheartedly support the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Warren. Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to comment on the adult social care elements of this budget. Central government funding for adult social care, in common with other council services, has been cut systematically over the past decade. During this time, the proportion of council budget spent on social care has increased significantly. More recently, the government has woken up to the fact that this is not sustainable and has introduced the social care precept, which is in effect a local tax designed to offset some of the reductions in the funding it allocates to local authorities. The precept remains in place this year, raising much needed funding for adult social care. And from April 22, central government will raise further funds through the Health and Social Care Levy, which will increase the cost of national insurance paid by people in employment. This is a significant additional tax for people on low incomes. For example, people paid £20,000 a year will pay 10% more for their national insurance contributions. It also increases the costs for employers, including those in the social care sector. The majority of the £12 billion a year expected to be raised through the Health and Social Care Levy will go to the NHS, but about 20% will come to local authorities as a contribution towards the cost of the government's recently announced social care reforms, which will come into place from October next year. That provides some of the backdrop to this budget. The other important element in relation to social care is the staffing crisis, where low rates of pay and lack of career progression, a response to systemic underfunding, and staffing shortages caused by a combination of COVID and Brexit have led to serious staff shortages within the sector. This has made it increasingly difficult to provide all the services that people need, and this budget is taking steps to address that. Given the pressures on finances, adult social care has, along with all other areas of the council, or all other areas of council services, been required to make savings, and some have been possible through the rebasing of areas where there have been changes in demand through to our transformation work. We are, however, investing in pay inflation and contract inflation to offset increases in employment and living costs. And we're working towards all staff being employed on the rates set out in our fair price of care policy. We are also investing in preparatory work to ensure that we are ready to implement the social care reforms in October 23. We know that these reforms will increase the costs of providing adult social care, and we hope that further funding will be provided to support this from next year. Additional funding has also been identified to prepare for young people who we know will be transitioning from children's to adult services, to ensure that their needs continue to be met appropriately. I'm also delighted to note that significant capital investment has been identified to fix the roof at the Carswood Day Centre. This has been leaking for a number of years, and that predates our administration starting. Carswood provides services for people with very complex needs, including a significant proportion with profound and complex learning disabilities. It also acts as a staff base and a venue. It's an essential service, and the repairs should safeguard its future so that it can continue to support some of our most vulnerable residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bourne. Councillor Wood.
Thank you very much. When I was first elected 2 years ago in Bath and North East Somerset, things weren't great here in Baines. The previous Tory administration, as we've heard tonight, made hundreds of redundancies, and frontline services, a lot of which fall in my portfolio, were on their knees. Our recycling service was understaffed. Our streets were so filled with rubbish that Bath streets hit the headlines for being so dirty. There was no enforcement, and fly tippers had an open invitation to dump in our area. We didn't even have enough staff to empty the drains or clean up slippery leaves. I'm proud that the Lib Dem administration was ambitious and has turned things around. We've already invested in reversing cuts to street cleaning and fly tipping enforcement, We've already invested in our curbside recycling service to boost crew numbers and increase resilience. And the results are clear. Fly tipping fines have tripled. Fly tipping tonnages are down year on year. Recycling is up year on year, culminating in a record-breaking year for recycling last year. Bain's best ever year for recycling, and we're now the 4th best unitary council in the country. I'm proud that this budget is ambitious and is full of good ideas and yet again delivers for residents. We're building new recycling centres so that we continue to recycle even more into the future. We're delivering an extra £2 million for fixing our roads, and we're delivering an extra £1 million for cleaner and greener streets. You may well ask, what would be the alternative if the Tories were in charge still? I, like others, was surprised to hear the radio interview from the Tory leader of Baines last month. They said they made lots of redundancies the last time they were in control, and he said that they would do so again. These are the people who clean your streets and collect your recycling. Well, I'm glad that we're back to cleaner and greener streets and record-breaking recycling levels. But be in no doubt, the alternative under the Tories is still this. It's no ambitions, no ideas, and just saying no, just cuts and redundancies. Cuts to frontline services and to the staff who pick up our litter, collect our recycling and clean out our drains. But despite the backdrop of COVID and government cuts, I'm proud of the budget that's presented tonight, and I look forward to a bright year ahead of making our area even cleaner and greener.
Thank you very much, Councillor Woods. There are no more people asking to join the debate. Ask Councillor Samuel to sum up, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. I think, and thank you to other Cabinet colleagues for setting out some of the detail in your portfolios that we can expect to see this year. And thank you for your hard work in working with council officers to put these proposals together. I just want to finish before we go to the vote by thanking the senior leadership team under Will Godfrey's leadership, and in particular the finance team under Andy Rothery's leadership for the work they've done on this budget. They have worked damned hard all year, and they've really made sure that the figures we see before us tonight really are what we can expect to see. And I'll come on to how good their work is in the next report. But I think the message coming across from colleagues is quite simple. Good finance equals investment in council services for the future. Bad finances equals drift and dither and waste. That's a very clear choice. Let's move to the vote, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Samuel. Well put. I'll just need to note for everybody before we move to the vote that Councillor Ball has had to leave because of a family emergency. So he's no longer here to cast his vote. Right, all in favour of the budget, please raise your hands. That is unanimous, I believe. Marie, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, moving on to item number 13, Treasury Management Strategy Statement 22-23. Councillor Samuel, I ask you to move the recommendations, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The council is required to have a strategy, and that always sits alongside the council that sets the budget. The policies are there for managing investments and how the security and liquidity of those investments is to be secured. And we keep that under continuous review, and it's regularly reported to the Cabinet and Council throughout the financial year, and also updated to reflect wider market conditions. The content of the strategy is set out in the report, and we are asked to consider it before its presentation to full council next week. I won't go through the main details of the strategy compared with 21-2. I'll cover those in the council meeting next week, but I think the most substantial change, as members will be aware, is the inclusion of an environmental, social and governance section to the report. And as this was new last year, a lot of detail has now been introduced, but it's been reduced in this report to make it a bit more proportionate to the overall strategy. And there are some other changes relating to CIPFA changes on the Prudential Code, and I won't go through those in detail. What I would just finish on before closing on moving the recommendation is the looming clouds over the UK economy. Growth has slowed to below that of the Eurozone. Inflation is way over the Bank of England target of 2%, and there are actually very few levers available to the bank to control inflation in prices, as the majority of inflationary factors have been driven by commodity prices. And that in turn relates to shortages in the supply chain. Now, unfortunately, the government seems to have gone the opposite way to proper economic policy. Deflationary acts such as the April national insurance rise and the huge rise in energy prices will drive down consumption, and interest rates rises, if they come, will further deflate the economy. So bizarrely, our government seems to be deflating our economy at the very time it should be inflating it. But don't believe what I say. Just look at the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee, which last few weeks ago said they expect 22-23 to be a very difficult year for UK citizens, with prices exceeding wage growth, and we all know that. And I'm afraid that has very clear implications for businesses in our area, because discretionary hospitality spending is always at the top of the things that people reduce when money is tight. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that it's not as bad as that. But I'm afraid there's only one answer. If you want a better economy, get rid of the Tories.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davies.
Yes, Chair. I'm very happy not only to echo Councillor Samuel's closing remarks there, but also to second this paper. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, move to the debate. I can't see anybody wishing to talk in the debate, so I'll move to the vote. All in favour?
Chair, can I just interrupt?
Yes.
This is in relation to item 13. Once you've done the vote in relation to that, I think we need to go back to item 12, which is missed.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, we'll continue the vote. Marie, that was all in favour for item 13. I'll just correct that. Yeah, all in favour.
Yeah, that's unanimous, Chair.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Move back to item 12. Michael, what's the reason for moving back to Michael to item 12?
I haven't moved the report.
Oh, you didn't say in your statement. Oh, I see. I get that now. Okay. Yeah. You want to say those words for us, please, Richard?
Yes. So, Chairman, we're on item 12, which is the Q3 monitoring report, budget monitoring report. I have got a few words to say in moving the recommendations. As we know, the budget report was on tonight's agenda, was the main event, but I want to actually highlight what I think is a quiet success story that is building. The revenue budget outturn is forecast to be under budget this year by £60,000 at the year end at the moment. And if we meet that milestone, then this Liberal Democrat administration will have delivered 12 consecutive quarters of balanced financial management. This is something the last administration got nowhere near. And my aim is that by May 23, the balancing of budgets will add a further 4 quarters to that total, 16 consecutive quarters of tight financial management. Now, why does that matter? Well, first of all, it highlights that the council is managing within its resources. No overspending, not wasting money on vanity projects, not taking from reserves to prop up overspending, not failing to deliver year-on-year savings, and not spending scarce capital resources on making staff redundant. In short, it's about being a well-managed, well-run, efficient council that taxpayers can rely on to manage their money properly. A council that takes strong action when it needs to, such as the emergency COVID budget we put through in 2020. Of course, there are ups and downs in any organisation that's spending over £300 million a year. And in this quarter, we report increased spending on children's services and the continuing downturn in income, which I referred to earlier. And this is balanced out by lower than expected spend on adult services. The capital programme has experienced considerable slowdown in the delivery of projects, largely due to the pandemic. but this has had the bonus of reducing borrowing costs in the short term. So, Chair, this report is a positive health check on the state of play of the Council's finances. And I thank the senior management team for their continuing vigilance on our behalf. So I move the recommendations set out in the report, which are all to note at 2.2 to 2.4. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel, and I apologise for getting excited by missing the budget monitoring report there. I formally second your movement of item number 12. Okay, is there anybody wanting to have a debate? No, I can't see any hands, so we'll move straight to the vote, please. All in favour? I think that's unanimous, Marie, is that correct?
That's unanimous.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's unanimous.
Great, thank you very much. So we've done item 13. We will move to item 14, which is Treasury Management Performance Report. Councillor Samuel.
Chair, you'll be pleased to know I'm not going to make any speech in relation to this. I'm going to move straight to the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Councillor Bourne, I believe you're going to second.
Thank you. Yes, I am happy to second this report.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Moved and seconded. I'll move to the debate. I cannot see any hands for the debate. I'll move straight to the vote. All in favour? Okay.
Yep, that's unanimous.
Thank you very much, Marie. Moving on, item number 15, Q3 Strategic Performance Report 21-22. Councillor Samuel to move the recommendations, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this is the third report we have received, and now we're in sync with financial reporting, backward reporting, and performance on the Council's performance indicators as well at the same time. And I'm really pleased, actually, that we now seem to be getting into the groove of reporting the money, the activity, and its complete transparency about what is happening. Now, I think all I'd say in relation to this report, the indicators are there for everybody to see. Individual cabinet members might wish to comment on the areas in their responsibility, but this is an important part of the Council's business. It's important that the public know what the Council is doing on its behalf, and warts and all, it's there to see. So I won't say any more than that. I'll move the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.3 and ask Cabinet to note that we will be receiving these reports for the foreseeable future. But I am, and I have discussed this with Councillor Warrington, I would like the corporate PDS panel to look, when we've completed a year, at how these are working and whether they think there are any improvements they would like to suggest. And I think she is agreeable to that suggestion, and I thank her for that. So, Chair, I move the recommendations 2.1 to 2.3 in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. I will officially second those recommendations, and I'd also like to thank, for all 5 reports, the excellent work yourself, Richard, and the officers, the senior management team, and everybody that's put into huge amount of effort to get to this point. And people don't see the hours and hours, hundreds of hours of work that you put in, and the senior management team. So from me and the whole cabinet, and I'd like to say probably from every resident of Bath and North East Somerset, very well done. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to the debate. I can't see any hands, so we'll move to the vote. All in favour?
Well, that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, we appreciate that. Okay, that leaves me to thank everyone for participating in the meeting, and for watching at home, and for watching on YouTube. And I will officially